March time. March. Go, dog. Halt. Lift. Stay. Left wheel. March. Go, dog. Halt. Present. Colors.
Oh, say, can you see those broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight? O'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Face. Color. Present. Huh. Order. Huh. Center. Haze. Forward. March. Forward. March.
And now for the placing of the wreath, the Hoff family will take the wreath up front.
Every city of this country, beneath the waving flag, there is a special group committed to their cause. And they stand for truth and justice in a nation under God. No matter what the cost, they will uphold the law. To assure us all of safety, they place their lives on the line, to lend a hand to those in need when help is hard to find. Beneath the badge, there beats a heart so full of courage, a light in the dark. Beneath the badge, there's only one aim: to serve the people, knowing that it starts beneath the badge. When their day is finally over and they find themselves at home, they may lay down their badge, but the call is carved in stone. And at times it gets so lonesome and the stakes they seem so high, yet they will proudly serve, though their names may be unknown. To assure us all of safety, they place their lives on the line, to lend a hand to those in need when help is hard to find. Beneath the badge there beats a heart so full of courage, a light in the dark. Beneath the badge there's only one aim: to serve the people, knowing that it starts beneath the badge. There are some who found the calling cost them everything they had, like a wife who gave a husband, or a child who gave a dad. Beneath the badge there beats a heart so full of courage, a light in the dark. Beneath the badge there's only one aim: to serve the people, knowing that it starts beneath the badge. Beneath the badge.
To the end of May, the arch will be blue for law enforcement. Thank you, Mayor. We'll start out with the enshrinements. I'd like to introduce Frank Adams, who is our local historian.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you here to the Hoff Memorial, the 24th Annual Hoff Memorial. This is my 41st year serving in Nevada law enforcement and the great citizens of our state, and I can tell you without a doubt that the most rewarding assignment I've ever had is being a historian for our Peace Officer Memorial. When we started this project back in the late 1980s, we went out and tried to find as many names as we knew of of officers that had been killed in the line of duty. We knew that we would have to add additional officers as they gave their lives in the line of duty for our citizens, but we were hoping that we had recognized all of those in the past, but that was not the case. So each year, sometimes we have additional names to add to that wall, and this year we're going to add 6 of those names that were lost in the history of Nevada's past. We'll also enshrine an officer killed about this time last year. At this time, I'd like to ask Steve Pitts from the Reno Police Department, Chief Steve Pitts, to come forward. He will do the enshrinement for Officer Harry Brown and Officer Wilson Fugate.
Good morning, Honorable Governor Sandoval, other distinguished guests, members of our political families and government, our brothers and sisters in law enforcement who serve so bravely each and every day, and most importantly, the families of our law enforcement personnel for standing by our men and women and sharing them with us. Today we'll share stories of those lost in service and those who survived deadly encounters while protecting and serving our communities. On behalf of the Reno Police Department, we will be adding Officers Harry Brown and Wilson Fugate to the Hoff Memorial. But before I tell you about these fine men, I would like to share a few comments with you. There is no higher service than the work done on the street by law enforcement and our military here and overseas. It's not to say that what we do is more important or better than others. It's to say that at the end of the day, what we do is much different. And we can't lose sight of that. It's different because the decisions we make have strategic consequences. and in many occasions will require us to restrict the very freedoms we're commanded to protect. And unfortunately, all too often, those situations involve life and death. We know the real stories of law enforcement service are written in the footprints on the streets of our community, in interactions you have with those we serve, and in the sweat and blood shed to protect and sustain the liberties and freedoms of our citizens. Today we stand at a place of honor and reflection, and in that reflection we must consider the tremendous responsibilities and selfless dedication to others that those who are we talking about today have demonstrated, and we must also know and prepare for what lies ahead. In speaking with you today, I would remind us of the words of President Abraham Lincoln, who said that through the deeds of those lost, they have spoken more eloquently for themselves in the importance of what we should stand for than the living ever could. We can honor their service by rededicating ourselves to the cause for which they gave a full measure of devotion. The commitment to serve is one of tremendous responsibility, and as law enforcement officers, we leave the safety of our homes every day to serve our communities, and we do not come as conquerors, but as guardians. Guardians of truth, justice, and through this service, we nurture the seeds of freedom. This pursuit of service before self is another example of why we live in the greatest country on earth. Your dedication to those we serve sends a penetrating message, not only to those in our community and in this country, but a message of hope to those around the world who dream of and pray every day for the very freedoms and liberties you protect. Officers Harry Brown and Wilson Fugate served the citizens of Reno in the early 1900s, a time when policing was much different and they worked with less resources. The men and women of the Reno Police Department want to thank retired Sergeant Jeff Church for his tireless work learning about these two men and bringing their history to our attention. On behalf of Officer Harry P. Brown, according to research, Officer Harry P. Brown, at the age of 58, when he was killed in the line of duty, was the oldest law enforcement officer in the state of Nevada. Officer Brown worked a night shift, and at the time of his death, he had received fatal injuries when he was in a fight and kicked in the face by a suspect while effecting an arrest. Officer Brown died on September 26, 1905. Please join us in honoring Officer Harry P. Brown's service to this community.
Hoff.
On behalf of Officer Wilson Fugate, Officer Wilson Fugate was a 17-year veteran of the Reno Police Department when he died due to a heart attack following an altercation with an intoxicated suspect on July 2, 1929. Please join us in honoring Officer Wilson Fugate's service to the community. In closing, a message to our law enforcement brothers and sisters. Today, as you leave this place, leave remembering. Remember to be proud and honest in all your actions. Remember to always possess humility. Remember, you must always be prepared and never substitute words for action. Remember, our communities rely on you to face the stress of difficulty and challenge, to go forward when the storm is at its worst. Remember to give thanks for your blessings and for the responsibilities bestowed upon you. And finally, but most importantly, remember those who we have lost. If you are able, save a place for them inside of you. And save one backward glance when you are leaving the places they no longer can go. Take what they have left and what they have taught you with their loss, and keep it deep in your heart. God bless you.
Thank you, Chief Pitts, and thanks to the Brown family for joining us here on this ceremony recognizing their family. I'd like next to introduce Lieutenant Greg Ferguson from the Union Pacific Railroad Police to do the enshrinement for Special Agent Eveli B. Bates.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here on behalf of the Union Pacific Railroad Police Department. Special Agent Eveli B. Bates with the Southern Pacific Railroad Police, badge number 834. End of watch, Saturday, November 8th, 1924. Special Agent Bates, while protecting a moving train, was fatally injured when he fell between two rail cars near Huxley, Nevada. Please honor Special Agent Eveli Bates.
Send up.
Again, on behalf of Special Agent Eveli Bates, we honor him. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant. We appreciate you being here today. I'd like to next introduce Sheriff Mike Haley from the Washoe County Sheriff's Office, who will do the enshrinement for Officer Harry Ward Swain.
Thank you, Frank. Governor, family members, especially, and guests and law enforcement personnel. I want to speak narrowly to the issues this morning with respect to a deputy that served with Washoe County Sheriff's Office. I've asked two motor officers to come forward because the individual that we are enshrining today was a motor officer in 1935. As I said yesterday at the memorial in Carson City, long before many of us walked the face of this earth, public servants who came before us kept our society safe, and some paid the ultimate price of that service with their lives. Such was the case for Deputy Harry Ward Swainey. Deputy Swainey, a 31-year-old, 4.5-year traffic motor officer, didn't know when he woke up that morning on August 5th, 1935, that he would face two accidents. The first accident occurred early on his shift while on motor patrol in Washoe Valley with fellow deputy Bud Young. The faulty part on a motorcycle dislodged, striking Deputy Swaney and Deputy Young, who was riding alongside of him. Deputy Swaney, the less injured of the pair, rendered aid and then transported Deputy Young to the hospital, where he was treated for multiple wounds that he had received from flying debris. After ensuring his partner was safe and being cared for, Deputy Swaney immediately headed back to the scene of the accident, his first accident, to retrieve both motorcycles. En route to that accident scene, and while riding with Archie McIntosh, a private citizen, a head-on accident occurred, seriously injuring Deputy Swaney. Deputy Swaney headed back to Washoe General Hospital in a private vehicle, speaking and expecting to be patched up and returned to duty. That was not the case. On August 12, 1935, at exactly noon, while on the operating table undergoing surgery for multiple fractures, he succumbed to his injuries. He left his wife Gladys and daughter to deal with life alone. The Washoe County Sheriff's Office, and especially our motor unit, are proud to recognize Deputy Swaney today. Thank you very much.
Present. Up. Order. Up.
Thank you, Sheriff Haley. At this time, I'd like to ask Sheriff Jerry Antonero from the Story County Sheriff's Office to come forward and help enshrine Deputy Hugh J. Gallagher.
Although gone, he's never forgotten. Story County Deputy Sheriff Hugh Gallagher, on April 30th, 1948, the night deputy on duty, received a call of a prowler on Howard Street. Deputy Gallagher responded from the courthouse on B Street. The streets of Virginia City are very steep, approximately a 12% grade. Deputy Gallagher responded in the mode of transportation available at that time, on foot. Upon his arrival at the location of the prowler, he collapsed and died from a heart attack. Please join me and the family in honoring Deputy Gallagher.
Present. Up.
Thank you, Sheriff Antonero, and to the family of Deputy Gallagher. I'd like to ask at this time if Director Greg Cox from the Department of Corrections to come forward to help enshrine Corrections Officer Vincent Tatum.
It's certainly an honor and a privilege to be here today representing the Department of Corrections on behalf of Sergeant Vincent Tatum of the Southern Desert Correctional Center. Sergeant Tatum, on September 25th, 1982, his body was found in the desert east of Las Vegas. Sergeant Tatum had been shot 4 times in the head and beaten. It was later determined that Sergeant Tatum had been working in internal affairs investigation at Southern Desert Correctional Center. He had disappeared after leaving the prison in late August. His body was found 1 month later. Mr. Tatum was a member of our department, an honored member, and held the rank of sergeant. I honor him in behalf of the staff of the Department of Corrections and our law enforcement family.
Present. Arms.
Thank you again for the honor and the service of Sergeant Tatum to this state and the department.
Thank you, Director Cox. Those officers that we've just enshrined may have been lost in Nevada's history, but please be assured that they will never be forgotten again. Now we come to our last enshrinement, and this is the one we all knew would inevitably happen when we built this memorial. We knew that those officers serving currently and in the future would pay that ultimate price with their life to protect the citizens of the state of Nevada. I'd like to bring at this time Sheriff Tony DeMeo to come forward, if he would, and help enshrine Deputy Ian Michael Dutch.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Governor, for your words yesterday and for your presence and your support of law enforcement. We appreciate that. Distinguished guests, most importantly, the families and our brethren in law enforcement who are still serving today and carrying out the mission that was first started in this country back in our agency started in 1642 to protect my former agency and to serve the people of their community. My family goes back in law enforcement well over 100 years. The year I started in law enforcement, my father's kind of worried about my safety. 1973 is when I started, and the only thing we had then was a wheel gun, 18 rounds, baton, and handcuffs, and we were sent out on the street to bring back some type of civility to a city where crime has gone wild and the citizens were not well protected, and knew we had a mission. A couple weeks after the academy, that became more evident, the dangers we faced when 2 members of the department I served with and the precinct where I worked lost their life. And my father would let me know every time he would hear that, and he said, you got to do something to make the job safe. And I tell him, we're not in a job that is safe. We're in a job to make our community safer. As a combat veteran, half my class were Vietnam vets. We realized there's a new war out there and wanted to take back the streets from people who want to rob our citizens here of the freedoms that we enjoy, make them victims and prey upon them, make their lives live safe. And they're realizing that we are the thin blue line that protects them
from the cruelty that is out there, for the evil that is out there. I know you all know that. He knew that, and and as a combat veteran, he knew the dangers that were out there. About 2 years before he lost his life, he was engaged in another firefight with a suspect in another domestic battery in Terrible's Lakeside, the resort RV community that's there, where him and several other officers engaged in a firefight with an Iraqi war vet who decided that he was not going to be taken alive. Deputy Ian Deutsch, being the first one on scene, was the one who was ambushed. Subsequently, other officers responded. We thought we almost lost an officer who was shot by the suspect. He survived, thankfully. And it was Ian's best friend, Eric Murphy. Ian realized the dangers that he faced. It was real to him, as real to anybody else that's here, and as real to the families that are here, the survivors, the surviving family. The most important thing what we can do is not to remember how they died, because those incidents happened so quick and so short. Ian's life is what we have to remember, as much as the lives of the officers that have fallen, not only the 117 that are on the memorial wall, those enshrined in the wall here at the Hoff Memorial, over the 19,000 that are enshrined in Washington, D.C. One of the most important things I want to make sure is when I have talked to survivors of these incidents, when they lost family members, one of the things they asked me, and when the first time I got involved, this was back in my other agency when I was employee assistant, I had to deal with the surviving family, was what can we, what is it that we can do? I expected to say, and I thought it was going to be evident to bring back the one that they lost. And they realized that person was gone, and they did the job they wanted to do, what they loved to do. This is not an occupation that we're forced into. It's an occupation that we look inside ourselves, that we want to make sure our communities are safer for the people we serve, and making sure that our community is a better place for it. All they wanted to say is that wanted to make sure that these people were remembered. I know Susie mentioned that to me, and Vicki mentioned that to me during the times that we dealt with the family, and I want to make sure that even if there was no officer, and I wish the blessed day when there's no officers being enshrined anywhere in this country, I want to let you know is that we still will have memorial services for those that have fallen. They will never be forgotten. And rest assured that we will carry on the legacy that they gave us, the honor they gave us, the commitment, the dedication, the good times, the funny times. I remember Ian being one who said this, and I asked him when he came back from Afghanistan, he came to me and he wanted to get back to work really quick. And I asked him, well, I'll give you another week off to spend more time with your family. If you're short on cash, I'll make it admin leave. I have the authority to do that. He says, no, I want to get back to work. And I said, okay, why? He says, and Eric said the same words, and it probably echoed amongst many of you here. It is what I do. It is because that is who I am. And that was Eric's words to me, and those were Ian's words to me when I talked to him about that. I saw him that day, and unfortunately, as what was said before, is that when I saw him at the scene and we were talking to Ian and we were telling him to keep in the fight, and I was holding his hand just before he left in the ambulance to fight for life to go to Las Vegas, still talking and still telling us it's going to be okay. Unfortunately, he lost that battle. His wounds were too severe. Knowing the fight that Ian had in him, I know if anyone could survive those wounds, he would have. Unfortunately, we lost a great deputy, a great member of our community, and a great member of the Nye County Sheriff's Office. And I ask all my deputies to work for Nye County Sheriff's the best legacy they can give Ian. This is continue the mission he started, and keep the dedication and the honor that he's exhibited during his short career at the Nye County Sheriff's Office. Those couple of seconds robbed us of Ian, but they should not rob us of Ian's life. And I wish that the family, Ian's family, Susie, Vicki, Cyan, and Jonathan, please join us. To the family of Deputy Ian Michael Deutsch, K93, thank you so much. It was an honor to know him, and he will always be remembered in our hearts as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff DeMayo. That concludes our enshrinements. Just one last word. I'd like to say that thanks you to the family members that are here today that participated in these new enshrinements, and to the family members of our other officers. Please know that you're part of our law enforcement family, and if you ever need something, all you need to do is call upon us. Thank you.
For the presentation of survivor plaques, I'd like to call Chief Pitts, Reno Police Department, Chief Garcia, University of Nevada Police Department.
Before I get started, I just have to revisit something Frank said earlier, and I'd like to have another round of applause for Frank Adams. He's an incredible man. I've been in the business for over 3 decades, and I have to tell you that he's always been there for us. Doesn't matter what part of the service you're in this state. And Frank, I got to tell you, I'm very impressed with your service, and thank you. I have Officer Brian McQuatty from the Reno Police Department, Officer Jay Hawkins and Derek Cecil from the Reno Police Department, and Officer Tom Emmons from the University of Nevada Police Department. Come forward, please. On August 27th, 2010, at 2 p.m., Officer Brian McQuatty initiated a traffic stop of a red 2010 Chevy Camaro in the Circus parking garage at 500 West Street. Prior to the stop, Officer McQuatty received information from communications that the vehicle was associated with an armed fugitive from Colorado. The wanted subject had a history of assaults against law enforcement, and he had made several statements that he would not return to prison. Officer McQuatty was assisted by Reno police officers Jay Hawkins and Derek Cecil, and the University of Nevada Reno police officer Tom Emmons. The officers took up positions of cover around the suspect behind their vehicles and motorcycles. As Officer McQuatty gave orders to the suspect and the passenger in the vehicle to raise their hands, the female passenger exited the vehicle and fled from the area on foot. The suspect remained inside the vehicle for a short period of time and then exited with a .22 caliber pistol, pointing it to his head. Despite repeated orders to put the gun down, the suspect exited the vehicle with the weapon still pointed at his head, looking back and forth, checking the officers' positions, and then pointed the weapon in the direction of the police officers, who immediately returned fire with their pistols, killing the suspect. At this time, on behalf of the work by these police officers, would you join us in thanking them for their commitment and service? And I have Officer Nick Duraldi, Officer Ryan Conley, Officer Sean Sheehan, and Officer Eric Haig from the Reno Police Department come forward, please. On September 24th, 2010, at 2 a.m., Officer Nick Duraldi was in the area of John Champion Park at 1525 Coonsley Street when he heard what he thought was the sound of fireworks. The sounds he heard were actually gunfire from a small caliber handgun being fired by a mentally unstable, homeless person by the river. Officer Duraldi called for assistance and Officer Ryan Conley responded. These two officers took cover behind some small trees in the area and observed muzzle flashes about some 60 yards away. The subject was firing his weapon across the river at an unknown target. Officers Duraldi and Conley directed other units into the area in an attempt to contain the suspect. Officers Sheehan and Haig met with the other two officers, and it was at this point the suspect began firing on the four officers. These officers engaged in a gunfight, with the suspect striking him several times and knocking him to the ground. The shots these officers fired were in low light conditions and from relatively a long distance with no cover. The suspect fell behind a dirt hill, and these officers made a tactical approach using their vehicles and other available cover and coordinated a rescue effort. The suspect was eventually detained and handcuffed and treated for non-life-threatening injuries. Would you join me in thanking these officers for their incredible service in this case?
For our next presentation from Elko County Sheriff Jim Pitts, and Director of Department of Public Safety, Chris Perry.
We have Deputy Mark Hawkins, Sergeant Nick Scaletti, Sergeant Adrian Brenzel, Trooper Jeff Howell, and Trooper Ben Jenkins, and Sergeant Stewing. And Officer Lynn Van Etter. On February 24th, Elko County Sheriff's deputies Mark Hawkins and Lynn Van Etter were dispatched to 1208 Ruby Avenue in Wells, Nevada on a physical domestic violence call. Nevada Highway Patrol Jeff Howell and Ben Jenkins were dispatched to assist on the call. Officers learned that a male subject was reportedly chasing a female subject down the alley behind his residence. As Deputy Hawkins checked the alleyways on Ruby Avenue, he entered the alleyways between 2nd and 3rd Street and was approached by a witness who advised him that a male subject was on the roof. Deputy Hawkins observed the subject, later identified as Peter Koka, with what appeared to be a rifle on the roof of a garage. He then backed out of the alley, taking a position on the street. He exited his vehicle, pulled his duty weapon, and ordered Coca to show his hands. At this time, Trooper Jenkins and Trooper Howell arrived and took positions flanking Deputy Hawkins' vehicle. Deputy Hawkins again ordered Coca to show his hand, and Coca refused. At this time, Coca opened fire on the officers, striking the officers' vehicles over 80 times. The officer took cover as Deputy Hawkins returned fire. Deputy Van Etter also arrived and took cover near Trooper Jenkins and Deputy Hawkins' location. Trooper Jenkins reported shots fired over the radio. Shortly afterwards, Sergeant Nick Segaletti arrived and took a cover near Deputy Van Etter. Coca continued to fire on the officers. At some point, Coca climbed off the roof behind the garage and ran across his property towards his house. Coca stopped at the location alongside his house, which gave him a hit position and an advantage on the officers. From this position, he fired multiple rounds at Deputy Van Etter, striking him 5 times. Upon realizing Deputy Van Etter had been shot, Trooper Jenkins, Deputy Hawkins ran from their position of cover in an open field of fire, grabbed Deputy Van Etter and dragged him approximately 50 feet to his patrol vehicle, where he was placed in the back seat. Sergeant Segaletti also ran to Deputy Van Etter's vehicle and crawled through the driver's seat, crawled over the radio console into the driver's seat, where Deputy Hawkins then covered Deputy Van Etter with his body, and Sergeant Segaletti drove him to a waiting ambulance. Trooper Howell maintained his position while taking fire in order to keep the suspect at bay and who helped establish a perimeter. Once the other officers arrived, Trooper Jenkins then joined Trooper Howell in establishing surveillance. After loading Deputy Van Etter into the ambulance, Sergeant Segaletti and Deputy Hawkins returned to the scene. Upon hearing about the shooting incident, Department of Public Safety Investigator Division Sergeant Kelly Steeling and Elko County Sheriff Sergeant Adrian Brazil responded to the area to assist in maintaining a perimeter and control the suspect's movements. Shortly after arriving, Sergeant Steeling and Sergeant Brazil had contact with a citizen who'd come out of her residence to go to work. She advised the sergeants that her boyfriend was inside the residence, and after a brief conversation, she was left for work. Shortly after that, she left the area. Sergeant Steeling and Sergeant Brazil observed a male subject walking from the area of the female citizen's yard. Initially, they believed this was a boyfriend. However, quickly realized it was actually Coca, observed that he had a rifle. They gave verbal commands, which were ignored. Coca then raised the rifle and fired multiple rounds at Sergeant Steeling and Sergeant Brazil. While taking cover, Coca jumped over a fence, and the sergeants lost sight of him at that time. Despite tremendous efforts by law enforcement agencies to locate Coca, he remained at large for the entire morning until the early mornings of February 26th, when he was taken into custody in front of his residence by members of the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Team and the Elko County deputies. This historic events to the Elko County Sheriff's Department deputies, Mark Hawkins, Lynn Van Etter, Sergeant Segaletti, Sergeant Brinzel, and the Department of Public Safety Troopers Jenkins and Howell and Sergeant Steeling, while under attack by Coca, these actions of these officers undertaking a great risk of personal safety are a reflection of the professionalism and dedication to the citizens of Elko County and the state of Nevada. Thank you.
Privileged to be here today representing the Department of Corrections. I've got a email that was sent to me by a witness of this incident, and I'd like to read what John Hill has to say about Lee Grider. How do you measure character, courage, and compassion? Actions. Actions speak louder than words. I have just come from witnessing a 3-car accident that resulted in 2 fatalities in Mound House. I wanted to let you know about the conduct of one of your officers, Lee Grider. One of the vehicles immediately caught fire and the driver was trapped inside. In a matter of seconds, the flames went from about 5 feet to over 10 feet high, and the heat was very intense. Lee jumped from his vehicle through the flames and tried to get the driver out. He was joined by several other people with fire extinguishers, but that made no headway on the flames. He worked for over a minute until the flames were just too much and they had to give up. But the courage he showed and the heroism he exhibited was a step above what most people could have done and says a lot about his character. Lee suffered burn injuries to his wrist, and I'm very proud to have him as a member of our department, and he's a fine example of a correctional officer. Thank you.
For our guest speaker, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the Governor for the state of Nevada, Brian Sandoval.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's truly a privilege to stand here at this memorial with you today. As governor, one of my highest honors is that I work closely with the men and women of law enforcement. Like many of you, yesterday I attended the Nevada Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Commission in Carson City. I said then, and I'll say it again today, in the 4 short months that I have served as Nevada's governor, I've learned that there are as many humbling days as there are days filled with optimism about our state's future. Today is both. I am humbled by the display of courage in this memorial behind me and in the conduct of the men and women of law enforcement who surround us. All who visit this memorial must and should feel the same. This memorial is named for Reno police officer James Hoff, who was killed in the line of duty in June 1979. Officer Hoff was serving as an undercover narcotics officer and was abducted during an undercover narcotics transaction, a short distance from this very spot. This memorial was built by Job Corps students as a remembrance of him and Nevada peace officers who have died in the line of duty. Together with the feelings of humbleness evoked by this memorial where we gather today, we should all be inspired by the new faces of strength and courage who have stepped forward to protect our families every day. Earlier this year, I had another day of pride and optimism. I attended the Department of Public Safety's Academy 64 graduation, watching young men and women join the ranks of Nevadans who serve in law enforcement. I was struck not just by their eagerness to start their careers, but by the dedication and hope on each of their faces. We are truly fortunate that so many Nevadans are willing to pursue a career in law enforcement. At this very same event, we honored the heroic efforts of Deputies Mark Hawkins and Lenwood Van Netter, Troopers Jeff Howell and Ben Jenkins, and Sergeants Nick Sigletti, Kelly Steeling, and Adrian Brenzel. These officers, as you just saw, who have been honored today, were all part of that officer-involved shooting that was described by the Elko County Sheriff. As was mentioned, Deputy Van Etter was shot 5 times. I cannot describe for you the emotion and pride that I felt to see these officers honored at the same time and place that we launched the careers of young graduates who are joining the ranks. I feel that same pride today, seeing them honored today with these survivors' plaques. Those events, yesterday's ceremony, and today's special recognition are reminders that all who visit here and all Nevadans everywhere must remember what truly matters: our safety, our liberty, our security. We must remember too that law enforcement officers are never really off duty. They give of their time and talent, and sometimes their life, no matter what time of day or whether they're officially on the clock. Every day, the men and women of law enforcement willingly put themselves in harm's way. They go to work not knowing from one moment to the next what might happen, and yet they do not hesitate, they do not waver, you do not blink. Preparedness and public safety are not 9-to-5 jobs. In these challenging times, when families and society are under so much added stress, it is fitting to remember those who have fallen, those who have faced death, and those who serve every single day in every single city and town in our great state of Nevada. We were reminded this week by events in Pakistan about the importance of freedom, vigilance, and preparedness of all those who serve and protect, whether in the armed forces, intelligence services, or law enforcement. I have the privilege and honor of serving as the chair of the Homeland Security Commission and as Commander-in-Chief of the Nevada National Guard. So I know these men and women are the backbone of our domestic defense system. I work directly with the Department of Public Safety, so I see the sacrifices every day that law enforcement officers make. In each of these roles, I see the dedication of the men and women who keep our state safe, who are ever vigilant and prepare us for the worst, who are sometimes called to serve in dangerous areas or overseas for months or even years, who provide the connections between the many agencies who work together on our behalf. The men and women of law enforcement are the true heroes of our everyday life. As we pause today to consider those who we have lost and those who have survived, it is fitting that we also think of their families, friends, and loved ones. The sacrifices we honor today did not occur alone. Families, friends, and loved ones shared in their sweat and toil, in the emotional struggle, and while we may not recognize them with a plaque on the memorial, we honor all of you in our hearts. I have said that service above self is a way of life to which we must all aspire. As a young boy, my parents raised me to believe that service must come first. We are here today because those who serve us in law enforcement share that belief and live it to the fullest. Today, we have honored 7 officers who lost their lives in the line of duty. I can offer no words more fitting than this quote from the National Law Enforcement Memorial. It is not how these officers died that made them heroes. It is how they lived. We should each be truly humbled by the sacrifice exhibited in the stories of all these officers that we heard today. As they join the ranks of other line of duty deaths honored here at this memorial, we rightfully pause a moment and consider how they lived their lives. From its inception, This great nation has placed stock in the critical importance of law enforcement. We put our lives in the hands of those trained to serve, our freedom in the care of those who protect us. I have been honored to have had a very small role with law enforcement throughout my career as Attorney General, as a federal judge, and now as governor. I have always held the highest respect for the men and women who put their lives on the line so that we can all enjoy life, liberty, and happiness. I trace the thread of law enforcement's role in our society to the founding principles of our nation: freedom, hard work, service, courage, dedication. Like all of you, I remain optimistic about our shared future, and again, I'm humbled to stand with all of you today. However, let us not set the honors and remembrances aside as we leave this place today. Every day, every hour, every minute, every second, as law enforcement officers go to work and put their lives on the line, let us never, never forget your sacrifice and service. Ladies and gentlemen, it truly is, on behalf of the people of the state of Nevada, an honor and privilege to be with you. God bless all of you. God bless our great state, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
A piece of our country he swore to protect will be buried close by his side. The culprit who shot him will stand up in court with counsel demanding his rights, and a widowed mother must work for her kids while spending many long and lonely nights. The beat that he walked was a battlefield, as if he had gone off to war, and the flag he loved will fly at half-mast, and to his name they will add a gold star. Yes, someone killed a policeman today who could happen in your town or mine. While we slept in comfort behind locked doors, a cop put his life on the line. Now as Ghost walks the beat on a dark city street, you'll find him at each rookie's side, for he answered the call and he gave us his all, and a part of America died.
Thanks, John. I'd like to call upon Officer William Flynn, North Las Vegas Police Department. "You Raise Me Up" is what he'll sing. And during this song, you'll see the doves fly out from behind the memorial.
When I am down and oh my soul so weary, when troubles come, my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence, to wait a while till you come and sit with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulder. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. Raise me up to more than I can be. Raise me up to more than I can
Uniform personnel, present, up!
And now for the benediction, Chaplain Ron Klinicki.
Protect them from danger and physical harm. We entrust to you their loving care and protection. Wrap your arms around them, and may you bring them home safely every night. God bless. Amen.
Please stay standing.